And we're back. Welcome to another Swan Call with Mr. Daniel and Mr. Pat, who may be watching. He told me in advance this time that he will not be able to join us, so I will not give him any grief at 13 minutes in the way we did last time. He was quite embarrassed about that. He'll probably be embarrassed about this too, but that's okay. Would you mind praying for me and
Yeah.
us? Please, thank you.
God, thank you for Ernie. Thank you for the Swan Factory. Thank you for this phone call. This is a good journey, and your processes are good, and your leadership is good, and your word is good. So thank you for bringing us to this point. Thank you for pivots, Lord. Thank you for thank you for pivots. Thank you for opportunities to repent and turn around and do better. Thank you that you have died and risen again, that we can actually do better when we pivot and not just make the same mistakes over and over again. As I am here, just wanting to help as much as possible, I ask that this session would be effective and fruitful, and as we look forward to what's coming in the future, we ask that you would shake all that can be shaken, and then bless immensely what's left that's of you. And in your name, amen.
Amen. How shaken are you feeling these days?
Pretty shaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. One outcome of this was originally we were scheduled to meet with investors on the 23rd. They were going to push that back to the 25th. That's my anniversary, and given everything else that's going on, that seemed like a bad day to have to worry about it. And so we got pushed to April 1st, so we have an extra week.
Okay.
Which is good, because as you know, once you do a pivot, you have a different market, different business model. You need to start from scratch with figuring out your product.
Right.
So what I thought I would do to make this more productive is to actually kind of talk you through our thinking and build a deck at the same time. And so let me go ahead and switch to presentation mode like in old times. You heard that Google Plus is going away?
What?
Have you heard this? I heard that Google Plus is being deprecated and all the meaningful services will be migrating somewhere else, the ones that people actually use.
I didn't hear anything about that. I saw that the head of Google Plus changed, but that's all.
So maybe it's partly speculation, but feel free to look it up while I get Keynote booted up. Find anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's conjecture.
Oh, okay.
I did know that Horowitz is taking over Google Plus, and now he's taking over. He's only referring to photos and streams that he's taking over, and so it's just conjecture that suggests if he's only taking over photos and streams, then the rest of Google Plus is probably dead.
Okay. Which it wasn't. I mean, yeah. Right now, it's basically a cool.
Yeah, it's really not much right now. We were having a conversation today about our social media presence, and I asked about Google Plus, and well, because we were talking about which social media icons we needed.
Right. Sure.
And then I asked about Google Plus, and the consensus was that as a social network, it's completely useless. But the only thing that it's so good for is that it, that's where you do reviews. So when someone searches for your brand on Google, they'll do, like their knowledge
Right.
graph thing will show up with
Right, which is
your entry.
awkward because I remember because Google Plus is so illiquid, it's really easy to game Google Plus reviews because like hardly anybody uses them.
Right. Right. I mean,
So,
I think our place has like 7, and I think if everyone on the team left a review, which I probably shouldn't say this on a Google Hangout, but I think we could completely,
overwhelm it.
yeah.
Right, yeah, which is a flaw in the system, right? I think that's a valid critique of the system. You shouldn't say you're going to do it. You just say, but you could say if we did it.
Yeah. Although I guess that's not really a critique. I don't know. In my head, like, can that really be considered a critique of the system, or just the system didn't get users?
No, what I criticize Google for is they put Google Plus reviews first, even if they're not the most reliable.
I see.
That's a horrible strategy tax.
I can see. Yeah, that makes sense.
So this is a so there's this guy that I'm working with, Rob Schultz now, who joined the team. Goodness, it has been less than a week since the Swan Factory was reborn. It's been a week, just kind of like the Swan Factory was only alive for 2 months. It felt like a year. It's only been a week. It feels like 2 months. But he's a church geek, right? He geeks out on the structure and function and purpose of the church. So he calls me a brother from another mother because we just geek out on this stuff. And we're talking about the model. So let me walk you through the history of it. We started out with the idea we're going to build a tool for churches. And it was a tool for pastors to broadcast to their churches, action items to get them to get out and start doing more stuff. And we noticed this odd pattern that we kept saying, like, yeah, as long as it's a tool for the church for just the pastor to push information out to the church, people are really excited about it, or for the pastor to manage the church. But we said we want to build something like Web.2 organic emerging, where people can start not just agreeing or disagreeing with what the pastor is saying, but they can start proposing their own actions and activities. And we started getting very gentle and respectful, but kind of like awkward pushback, like, oh, wait, but that stuff all goes through the church secretary, or that has to be checked against the cursed calendar because you want to schedule stuff. And I quickly realized the model that we are presenting, and actually we should probably just write this down because I keep explaining this over again. Let me call this deacon. So this she is. So financially speaking, saw this post already, right? The U.S. government is an HMO with guns. Big Ten universities. Are sports teams with tutoring. Churches. Churches are concert halls with childcare. Right, so that's and I realized that, sorry, concert halls with childcare. And because of that, so the incentive problem. The incentive problem is that pastors go into ministry to help people. They end up as CEOs of concert halls. They don't. They're measured on. Concert halls measured on attendance, utilization, and ticket sales.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The defining metrics their jobs depend on are right. And like attendance and giving, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what every pastor tracks all the time, because if those go down, the church dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then the creation problem. Concert halls have customers, have staff and customers. Staff do the work, customers pay for the work. Only rarely do customers and staff and great organizations always serve their customers well.
It's wrong there.
Thank you. Pair programming on Keynote. Well, not businesses. Business. Right?
Mm-hmm. So this is, I grew up in church,
Mm-hmm.
where church was most of everything of
Right.
my whole life, right? So I grew up with a metaphor of, especially with my family, I definitely grew up with a metaphor of you serve, you help in the church because you're a
Right.
part of it, so you helped. But are there people out there who don't grow up in the church, who show up in church, hear someone say something about giving, and end up forming a doctrine that says, I have to pay to go to church, and that's how I help?
The best statistics I remember is that something like at best 10 or 20% of church members serve,
Mm-hmm.
and the other 80%, they give, they show up, they're considered good church members if they attend lots of events,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And in fact, the church, and yeah, and so like you and I grow up in staff families, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see ourselves part of the staff of the church even if we're never paid for it. We just have that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when I was in high school, I was always backstage with the theater, right? It was just what we did. Um, I'd rather be up, helping produce the show than sit and watch it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's this thing, and so the uh, right. So is that we want church members to be active outside the church.
Can you switch back to your screen?
Sorry, thank you.
No.
Okay. Is to be outside the church active inside the church. Structurally, we treat them like customers, so they act like customers.
Mhm. I guess that's what I'm saying is sort of an interesting phenomenon to me. I've never felt like a customer of the church. And honestly, I think it really wasn't until I was an adult and started giving regularly that I started to realize even what I just asked you. I sort of had this thought, wow, like I could imagine someone showing up in here and feeling like they're a customer. Like they show up, they give their allotment of money every week, and they pay, to come, and that's the deal.
Right, and what's worse, people often rag on megachurches for their big productions, but we have this tiny little church, and most of our budget is facilities, sound equipment, worship pastor, children's pastor, right? Concert hall and childcare.
Mm-hmm.
Financially, and like I said, we do more than that, but we can't do less than that. And more importantly, we can't do other than that. We can't do anything that threatens the concert hall model. That's one thing I noticed. Like when we asked for these things, we kept running this thing where people say, well, we can't conflict with the church calendar. We can't, give people access to this resource or that resource. And it's not like it's just like one annoying person. That's just the norm in the church.
Right.
Because when you're a concert hall, you control what goes on in the concert hall, and your job is to keep everyone, showing up and keeping track with things. That's just the way church is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it leads to this really interesting you who think like staff. Okay. The resulting structure, you have this where you have, the Word of God at the center. You've got the pastor. If I had more time, I'd draw the circles, right? The worship team. And then, realistically, you've got then you have women and children. Let's say you generally see like a quarter of them doing childcare. Right. So in the actual worship service, it's one thing that God's been really working me on. In the church services, I guess we should. If a guy said, I'm going to take a job that requires me to miss 2 or 3 Sundays a week, we would really get on his case. If our wives are in church and they're doing childcare 2 or 3 Sundays a week, it's considered normal or noble. And it's like, wait, if it's important for us to be in the service 4 days a week, 4 weeks a month, why is it not important for our wives to be? Well, it has to be the way because of childcare. And I get the logic of that, but it's starting to grate on me. Right?
Go ahead.
No, keep going.
I was just going to say that's interesting to me as well. I completely understand how that happens. It was also strange to me as well when I realized that there were some people who only went to one service. To me, church has been and continues to be, and probably always will be, a 6 to 8 hour affair. Okay? I show up at 7:45 in the morning and don't leave till noon.
You said 11:45?
No, I show up at 7:45.
Oh, right. Yes. Noon. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not doing sound anymore, so I don't have to. But your worship teams like that, right? Because and we've iterated wonderfully on worship, and we've gotten amazing worship out of it, right? But we are not, and we've tried to become missional. But if you're anything like my church, we try a bunch of things, and it's ridiculously hard to sustain. Mm-hmm. You can do it as single events and one-offs, but you don't have the business model to support it because you don't have the structure to support it. Right. So here's the thing, right? This is kind of the way that your church is. It's a concentric circles, right? The Word of God, the pastor, the worship team, the men, women. Like literally, good churches have a mommy's room where women and children can be in a separate enclave outside the church structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then non-believers are completely outside the church.
Mm-hmm.
So the vision we are looking at, and say the point is that anything we do doesn't change that dynamic. It's not that these people are evil. It's not that they're stupid. They're awesome. They're excellent. They're hearing from God. But if you and I have learned anything in the Swan Factory over the last 6 months is it's really hard to hear from God. There are certain things you can only hear when you're in a certain place.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could not have heard the stuff I needed to hear about what's going on in my marriage 6 months ago. My wife tried. God knows she tried to tell me these things I was doing wrong and not paying attention to. In fact, the other thing that's happening, the way I paid for my my follies was selling my MacBook. I don't know if I shared this story with you. When I bought this big honkin' MacBook Pro, my last week when I was quitting Apple, my last chance to use my employee discount, I bought this massive thing, and I felt this twinge where God was saying, "You really shouldn't do that. You just need a better version of your existing MacBook Air." And I said, "No, I really want this. It makes so much sense." And I said, "It's not wrong, is it?" He goes, "No, it's not wrong, but I'm asking you to not do it." I said, "Well, if it's not wrong, I'm just going to do it anyway." So I bought the MacBook Pro, and we've gone through this, incredible dark night of the soul over the last 6 months. And I had to go through it. I mean, there was no way I could have been mature enough to listen better. That was the other conversation I had about it. Is that I can either listen or I can suffer. And it's like the only way to learn better listening is through suffering, right? And so
Right.
I realized that the MacBook didn't make a difference. But I remember I was really hoping that I would find a contractor or a programmer who would help me build this thing so I could meet my deadlines and I never did. And if I had found that person, I would not have needed the MacBook Pro. So in some sense, by doing that, it's not that was cursing me, but I had squelched the voice of the Spirit. It was a subtle nudge, and I ignored it, and I just charged on the path I was done. If I had stopped and said, "Whoa, God, I think I need this for what I'm doing, and more important, I think I deserve it," right? I've worked it up all these years. I've always been frugal. I just want to, buy the big honking sexy machine for once in my life. And God says, if you're going to act that way, you're not going to be able to hear my voice enough, because there's so much we could have done if we had heard God sooner. Like maybe we could have pivoted and started doing CWS or whatever. If I just taken realistically now what I know, I should have taken 3 days off to fast and pray and ask God what he did. But instead, I heard something God said. I said, "Okay, God, I'm on it. I'll get back to you when I'm finished." Right? It was only in the midst of it, a weekend or two when I was hitting the walls of CoffeeScript that I really started crying out to God seriously and praying before the sessions and everything, because I was too embarrassed to do that and too focused on the technology and the stuff I was doing. So anyway, long story short, that's why I feel like this happened, is that we've ended up with a structure where we have increasingly segregated services and non-believers are just outside the walls. So the vision is inside out church. Right? It's a cross, Christ at the center, non-believers, children, women, men. Um, we, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the I realize, we. I mean, it's not quite that, but that's the basic idea, right? That um, let me just make sure that's actually confusing. Okay. Right. The idea is we have this vision of like Christ is here in the church, right? And that's where we go to find Christ, and then we go out to do stuff for him,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's like no. It's inside out. We are not surrounded by the world. The world is surrounded by God, and God is pushing us, and the church is being pushed into the world to find Christ, to find the cross. And we're not going away from Jesus when we leave the church buildings. We're going closer to Jesus. That is where we find Christ. Now, it is certainly possible to get into this whole pantheistic things like, oh, we're going to find God on the inside. We need the body of Christ. We need to gather. Absolutely. But we don't really find the cross of Christ in the church. I mean, some of us do in some ways. But you can't find incarnation inside the church. Right? Incarnation happens in the world. That's kind of the... I had this wonderful picture when we were praying about this, we were prayer walking, and we had the sense that I had this picture of water buffalo, where they have this herd structure. That's where I got this picture from. We've been talking about turning church inside out for a while, but I had this wonderful picture, water buffalo, where the children are in the center, and then, the women, and then all the men on the outside facing, the world to protect it from the things. But what I realized is that actually, and we have a picture of this, nativity. The baby at the center, right? This is nativity. Right, this is... And this is nativity, the nativity scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at the center, then the mom, then the man, then the angels, right? And the so that's our vision statement. Turning the church inside out by enabling communities of purpose, fostering scalable relational networks. And the picture is a mashup of WhatsApp, Meetup, and Facebook.
I want to jump back to your screen.
Oh, I'm totally sorry.
No worries. We've done this enough that I no longer feel uncomfortable interrupting you to tell you to switch.
Yes. Like I said, my goal in life is to turn the entire world into an accountability system for myself. To help me mess up. It's not even really messing up less often, or it's messing up quicker. Discovering that I messed up quicker, right? Discovering deeper sins sooner. That's all I ask of the universe. And so far, the universe has been very gracious in granting that request. But the problem is that when you have this, that's in fact the problem with this structure, right? When you have a structure where the pastor, the guy in charge, is at the center surrounded by his cronies, and as a crony, I'm saying this, right? That, like you notice, that problems on the worship team get resolved immediately. Problems in childcare take forever, right? And we can live in our male privilege blind spots generations. So this purple community is that. So let's actually probably order it this way, because this is what. So where do people turn for community? They turn for Facebook, right? And Facebook is it gives you connection and information, but it's incredibly hard to organize, right?
Mm-hmm.
And deep interaction. Right, and like, and like I realized this, this is the problem space that we face in the Swan Factory, right? We had to use Google Plus For our connection system, we had to use Basecamp for organization system, and we had to use SMS or email for coordination. And it was okay doing it for the Swan Factory. Doing it again for a new team is an incredible pain, right? And that's why people who do this for large organizations move to some social project management system, right? Because Basecamp is explicitly not designed to integrate with big systems and big enterprise or manage teams of dozens of people. It's all built for the one-off small team.
Mm-hmm.
There's no directory, there's no social structure. They do a better job than most with email integration, but it's a whole different ballgame. So the idea is that if you want communities to actually organize to get stuff done, as opposed to just hang out and waste time, you need something different. And this is a tool that we could use today, right? Because we're a purposeful community, right? We want to know what's going on in each other's lives and pray and relate to each other and stay up to date, but we want to get stuff done, and we want to be able to coordinate instantly and not have to set up a separate SMS group and meetup structure and all this sort of stuff. Okay. There may be an ad hoc in there somewhere. Let's see, where's the Vision Inside Out Church? Where do I put that? Do I have a vision statement somewhere here?
I don't think we put that in there yet.
Did we not type that one in there? Let's see. Let's structure here. An amusing side note is I realized that I went through this pivot on Wednesday, and today I guess I'm going to write down that bit about I guess that goes there. Is that we did this big pivot yesterday, and I realized I had to spend today actually explaining the pivot to them, because I've just gotten so used to doing pivots
Mm-hmm.
that completely changing everything we've been thinking about on a daily basis doesn't bother me, but most people it takes a little longer.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, this is it's been such awesome training. Okay, yeah, this is the vision statement. Okay. Talk about Inside Out Church, purpose for a scalable relational. His purpose is that we getting stuff done as a community, right? This is you've heard I've talked about sodalities and modalities.
Nope.
Church and parachurch.
Mm-hmm.
Since the Roman Church, if not sooner, arguably even apostles and deacons, though that's probably not fair. Certainly since the time of Catholic orders, you have the parish model. Everyone here belongs to the church, whether they want to or not, whether they are good or not. Then you have religious orders, which are high commitment verticals, right? So you have horizontal churches that have multiple generations and everyone's welcome and involved. And then you have these vertical structures, religious orders in the Catholic world, parachurch organizations, missionary organizations, InterVarsity, this and that. Very high commitment, very focused, and they're just two different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
The church, the parachurch, and the church, and they have different structures, and people have tried to mishmash them. The best one is probably CMA, Church and Missionary Alliance, but they're kind of known for having mediocre churches because all the really hotshots get sent overseas as missionaries. And this is a really hard problem. But that's what we do at the Swan Factory, try to tackle the impossible problem because it seems like the right thing to do, whether or not it's sane or achievable or fundable. And so the idea is that the way to pull this off is scalable relationships. So we call it, how to beat Dunbar's number.
Mm.
And you need basically what's called a tangled hierarchy, hierarchy. So hierarchy means not just one root, not just a tree, and not just one membership. And I can try and draw it sometime, but the idea is. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You know, dropped out there. Is that the hierarchy means that there's multiple. Let's. I got to do my fingers at least to show you this. Yeah, hi Pat. Okay, so that you've got like multiple roots, and the there's crossover between the trees,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not necessarily unidirectional. It's not necessarily acyclic. And maybe and the direction, right? You could have loops going in. People from one level can be reporting up to another level, and this is how actual organizations like Apple function in practice, because they make a lot of effort to have that tangling and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But never how they operate on paper. Even holacracy is still very hierarchical in that these circles above them. It's not really a full network with different nodes. It may have strange loops. And the idea, the key concept is all this local responsibility, global accountability. This is one of these tensions that the church has been fighting about, and let me make if I can just do that slide.
Want to jump back to your screen?
Yeah, you got it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. That people say, well, you know, we need more community. We need to really share life together. And then we become this kind of communal thing where there's not much shared responsibility. And then we say, okay, now we really got to take Christian individualize it. Got to really take individuality. But then you lead all, which leads to all these Lone Ranger Christians who are taking
Mm-hmm.
local responsibility. And what you really want is to take local responsibility, but keep global accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem
Right.
is that when local responsibility, you accumulate local power, right? A local church, a standalone church without any denomination or oversight, the pastor is enormously responsible for what happens, but then he's not accountable to anyone. Conversely, in a denomination, all the big decisions are made at the top, including who works where, for the most part, and there's not a lot of. And here's this is really the thing. The goal is creativity, and this is there's a wonderful verse that we had on the wall. This guy Rob was letting us use his office a war room. Basically, we have one body, one spirit. Each of us has grace and gifts. A common vision, diverse. And I realize a concert hall has no room for diverse interests. You kind of have to be interested in what's happening in the concert hall, or you're not really a team player, which means you don't schedule a men's meeting that conflicts with the church potluck.
Mm-hmm.
It ruins the whole concept of uniformity.
Right.
But to pull this off, you have to break that that cycle. So the idea is
See, at this point, you honestly have me peaked because I totally agree with all the constraints, and I'm wondering if anyone has a good idea about how to fix some of these things.
right. So the idea is we need is that but you know we need a new model, right? Unfortunately, a startup is an organization formed to search for a new business model, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what a startup does. And the more radical a startup, the more novel the business model is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that's what we're here to do. And that's where I was on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. And I went to my entrepreneurs club and said, okay, this is it. I think we should just go and tell all the big wigs on March 23rd, we need Thursday New as well. You should just give us a couple $1 million to figure it out. And they said, because the one you have is all screwed up. I said, I think you're being a little harsh, Ernie. You may or may not be right, but you're kind of being harsh. And I realized you're right. It's not kind. Like, that may be the truth, and God may be asking people to do that, but it's not really very kind of me to just dump it on them like that. So I said, okay, purely out of kindness, we should build a traditional startup with a very clear business model and a very clear pitch deck, products, all the right things, purely as a kindness to them to make it easier for them to swallow it. Mm-hmm. And then as we talked to them, it was actually we should actually figure out the business model before, March 23rd or now April 1st, just to make it easier on them. Mm-hmm. So here's the part where we get more into a traditional thing. Okay, so here's we go into the plan. Okay, so plan is start with Christian mops, right?
Mops.
Mothers of preschoolers, right? These are isolated relationally. You've heard this. I don't know if Kelly's not yet at this point, but you're a mother of preschoolers when a telemarketer calls you on the phone and you talk for an hour because you're so desperate for human connection and adult conversation. What?
Yeah, she's on her way there.
Okay, yeah, right. So this is a common problem, right? They're isolated relationally. They are excluded from services due to childcare. Either they're watching their own kid in the mommy's room, in the crying room, or they're in the nursery watching the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And can't often make scheduled events. Right?
Right.
And they are right? I mean, one of the worst things I ever did for my marriage was take on a church ministry when I ran the Alpha Dinners 2003 project. Hugely influential, successful by many financial measures, devastating to my marriage because she was home alone all the evenings and I was busy. I was in meetings, I was consumed with all this stuff, and it wasn't that long ago when that was considered the norm. I'm a pastor, I serve the church, my family comes secondary. Mm-hmm. Right? That's how, that's changed for the better, thank God. But there's still a lot of that. In fact, that's my biggest stress factor is how much church stuff, how much this startup takes me away from my wife and kids. Mm-hmm. And it's and I told you to take over the world quickly, it's you start with the sewage.
Mm-hmm.
The sewage nobody wants to deal with.
Yeah.
Right. The idea is that, so the idea is how to start. Get, first talk to our wives. So list market research. I figure any meeting where the action item is I need to actually talk to my wife and actually listen to the uncomfortable answers is probably on the right track to what God wants, because I'm so bad at that. So market research questions. How do you connected? How do you, how often do you in the service?
Mm.
in the church service. What do you use to stay connected? Look, email, probably other.
Do you actually call people?
Oh, yeah, telephone.
Do you still use a phone?
um,
It's one of the most interesting things about my boss, actually, right now. Is it?
the pastor's wife, who's maybe watching this video someday. So,
Oh, no. She likes to use the phone.
like an
Like,
actual
yeah,
landline telephone.
yeah. No. I mean, it's your cell phone. But
Okay.
we were researching a product the other day, and we had a question about it, and she said, "Oh, we should call them." And I said, "What? What do you mean call them?" She picked up her phone, and we had her answer very quickly because we spoke to a human, and I
Yes.
was very confused.
I remember my boss once said that people who are good managers realize that actually talking to people is a good thing. That's one of the reasons they become managers.
I like talking to people, but I don't like telephones.
Ah, right. I mean, my boss will say, or you could just physically walk over there and talk to them, which is often better too. But it's often faster to use the phone. It's just a weird thing, and it's one of these habitual things. Um, so back to the do more of what service do you wish others services let's see, just say find more of bring those look like reasonable questions.
Uh-huh.
You see yourself having that conversation with your wife?
Absolutely. I feel like I already know what the answers are.
Uh-huh. Why don't you give me the update now? We got it here on the record.
Um, I mean, I would say how often in the church service? We just tried to go to church for the first time this last week, and baby was quiet in like a chest carrier through worship
Mm-hmm.
because she likes a loud noise. And then after that, she started fussing. So we had to go downstairs to the equivalent mother's room, where for this church, it's a room downstairs where the upstairs is being projected on the wall, and you
Right,
can.
sure.
So and Kelly sat and watched, and I walked around in circles with the baby for half of the sermon. And then Kelly went to the bathroom to feed, and that was it.
Yeah.
You know. Uh,
Because we don't have screaming children in concert halls.
right. So, well, and they can't. She didn't feel comfortable feeding in that environment.
Right, sure.
So, so at this rate, given how if a church service is 2 hours long, at this rate, it will be a long time before Kelly has a chance to sit through one whole church service.
Yeah.
Um, for staying connected, she doesn't like Facebook. She does. She actually does use the telephone,
Okay.
and they work not so great.
Mm-hmm.
For the best, that one I would actually ask her. For what you could find more of and what's hindering you from doing that. I think for her connection, she feels like she can't move and feels like the only thing that she can do is have people come to her.
Right.
And what's hindering her from that is she feels like people don't, lots of working moms or
Mm-hmm.
just working friends, and B, people living too far away.
Right. The hypothesis is So the is that they need a secure, trustworthy way to find people near them for ad hoc live interactions supported by a close community that maps. Because I assume that no woman wants to post on a public bulletin board, "Hey, I'm home alone for 6 hours of the day. I want someone to come hang out with me."
Right.
And,
Right.
they don't want to do it with random strangers. They want to find something near them that and ambient.
Now, this was something that the YWAM base actually really does really well.
Mm-hmm.
When everyone sort of lives so close, like
Right.
you're all in dorms, it's like college. You just happen
Right.
to hang out with people.
You create a virtual environment to offset our decentralized, our new distributed the downsides of distributed church membership. Right, that's another, that's another consequence of concert hall economics. Is hardly anybody lives in walking distance of their church,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's just you go for the right concert.
Right.
If you're a jazz fan, you're not going to go to a rock concert.
Right.
And so the idea is that we can now do that using social, mobile, and geo. Right. So the idea is, phase one is to, get a large church's ops membership list, sign them up, or use the, what are we calling this, Infra.Church? I see app to enable, the sponsor pays $5 per person per year. Directory information is then create tools for local self-organization, meetup part, flow that into ambient communities, Facebook, and actually facilitate real-time messaging. And then let's call this mobilizers. And this is still a little fuzzy, but the basic idea is that the sponsor creates this community group of people, but not anyone can post everything they want.
Mm-hmm.
Is for two reasons. One is that's a lot of chatter and noise, and second is that it creates. Also, it's one thing to say someone's a member of a group and can watch stuff, but the level of trust and responsibility you want for someone who's actually organizing, sponsoring events, is is higher. So you want to kind of vet them more thoroughly to make sure the quality of experience that you're creating is something that's meaningful. It shouldn't be just anointed though, but it should be that it's more like it's kind of like Kickstarter level. We're not making sure that the event's any good, but we're making sure that that person is who they say they are.
Okay.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea is this is advertising that I can get behind. Right? Saying, hey, I want to, do play dates at this place, and then so we talk about W, Ryan's wife, whose name I should not use since I haven't gotten her permission for you. But W wants to have play dates, stuck at home with a 1-year-old. So she's, an extrovert, a mobilizer. She says, I'm going to advertise local play date in my area. So she goes there and she looks on the map. She says 2 or 3 other families in the area from her church that she didn't realize were actually that far close by. She sends out those, hey, let's join me at this event. They all show up at the park together. They have a great play date. Yay. Okay. And they say they're interested in the play date. They subscribe to it. And then they said, okay, my kid's up from a nap. Can we go now? Right? And they can do real-time coordination to do it. And then when they get there, they meet another mom who's there. Oh, nice to meet you, blah, 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 blah. We should do this again sometime. Oh, sure. Grab this app. I'll sponsor you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's only $5 per person a year. That's a cheap price to buy a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Then she's in the app and she's in W's circle, and she joins this circle of moms doing these play dates. And then it's Mother's Day brunch at church, so she just posts it to the group of friends that, hey, we're doing this brunch at our church. And then next year she decides we should do a Bible study, so she invites this group of friends that she's created around this purpose. And suddenly the church is organized around, right, the kids are at the center, and then the moms, and then the dads are saying, why is my wife having all this fun? And the phase 2 is, that's the screen. And I got to wrap up because I'm being very hypocritical in ignoring my children to talk about how we need to stop ignoring our children. Phase 2 is men need the same intimacy and connection women do. We just don't want it. Right? This is where embracing diversity is so powerful, right? Women, I mean, I know so many men whose wives have their emotions for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're on right now. Ernie, your audio's completely messed up on my side.
CGI.
I'm gonna hang up and call you back. You sound like a robot.